welcome to your deep dive. Today, we're going to be looking at this wild conversation between Elon Musk and Joe Rogan from 2024.
Yeah, it's a classic Rogan and Musk
You
combo.
sent this to us, and it's all over the place in a good way. I think so.
Right.
Are you ready to jump in?
Let's do it.
Okay, let's get started with something you probably wouldn't expect.
Okay.
Video games and surgery.
Right. Who knew those two went together?
So Musk talks about how playing video games, like on the hardest levels possible,
Right.
makes him super focused, but it actually calms him down.
Yeah, he describes it as like a mental reset almost.
And of course, Rogan being Rogan mentions a study about surgeons who are also gamers.
Yeah, and there actually is a study about this.
Turns out they make fewer errors, work faster, and they're even better in those surgical simulations.
It's pretty wild.
It's wild.
What's so interesting here is the connection.
Yeah.
Both gaming and surgery require like insane dexterity and reaction time.
Makes you think we should be adding, must be a gamer to job descriptions for surgeons.
Maybe not, but that's an interesting thought.
And speaking of brain power, they go on to talk about the cognitive benefits of creatine.
Yeah, especially when you're sleep deprived.
This conversation is all over the place,
In the best way possible.
but I kind of love it.
Ugh.
Okay, and here's where things get a little bit spicy.
Uh-huh.
They go on to challenge the idea that eating meat is bad for the planet,
Yeah.
and they do not hold back.
Not at all. No, they used some pretty colorful language, to say the least.
They really highlight the difference between factory farming, which they agree is problematic,
Yeah.
and regenerative farming, which they say is sustainable and good for the environment.
Maybe even beneficial. Yeah.
They even say that there might be some ulterior motives,
Oh, like what?
ideological and financial, behind the push to go vegan.
It really makes you think
Yeah, it does.
about, what we're being told.
Like, are we really getting the full story?
Right, exactly.
Okay, now buckle up because this is where it gets really interesting.
Okay, am I ready?
They dive headfirst into Elon Musk buying Twitter and turning it into X.
This is a big one.
Rogan basically praises Musk for this.
He does. He really does.
He says that Musk single-handedly saved us from unchecked censorship and control of online narratives.
A bold statement.
It is bold, and then they talk about the suppression of the Hunter Biden laptop story.
Which they say the government might have had a hand in.
Yeah, and they touch on the G-platforming of Donald Trump,
Yeah.
which is a huge deal back then.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And Musk says that he felt like he had to buy Twitter because it was a threat to free speech.
Wow.
So that leads them to criticize what they see as a left-wing bias in the media.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
They bring up the very fine people thing
Where they say Trump's words were taken out of context.
to make him look bad, and they also talk about the COVID lab leak theory as another example of this bias.
Makes sense.
And that's why they say it's so important to go back to the original source material.
Right. And not just believe everything you read.
It's about thinking critically,
Absolutely.
forming your own opinions,
Exactly.
which is what we try to do here on the Deep Dive. So how does this all connect to you, the listener?
Well, they say that the 2024 election is a make-or-break moment for American democracy.
It's a big statement.
Musk argues that Democrats are letting illegal immigrants into swing states to get more votes.
And to kind of rig the system?
And they both worry about what would happen if we became a one-party state.
And what that would mean for individual freedoms.
Yeah, they're not fans of Joe Biden either.
No, they don't hold back.
They call his administration incompetent. They refer to him as a puppet.
Yeah,
And they even question whether Kamala Harris would be a legitimate president.
that's harsh.
And they're pretty critical of Kamala Harris.
Yeah, they question her qualifications and make fun of her public appearances
They also dive into woke ideology.
and how it limits humor and free expression.
Okay, and then
This is a good one.
there's the squirrel incident, which is almost too crazy to believe.
Tell me more.
So they talk about this news story where government agents killed a man's pet squirrel and raccoon,
No way.
and they're furious.
I bet they see it as an example of government overreach and the criminalization of everyday people.
For ridiculous reasons.
And it makes you think, like, where do we draw the line?
Right, what are we going to start arresting people for next?
So from pet squirrels, they jump to talking about the federal bureaucracy.
It's quite the jump.
Musk says we need to shrink the government because it's gotten too big and inefficient.
What's his solution?
He suggests getting rid of or combining agencies and even giving generous severance packages to people who would lose their jobs.
That's a pretty bold idea.
And they talk about how overregulation can actually slow down innovation and progress.
Makes sense.
And Musk actually gives a real-world example.
Oh, yeah. What's that?
He talks about how bureaucratic hurdles delayed the launch of SpaceX's Starship rocket.
Really?
They built the rocket faster than the government could process the paperwork.
Wow.
Okay. And then, because this conversation is always full of surprises,
What's next?
they jump into the future of work.
Okay.
Musk acknowledges the worries about AI and automation taking people's jobs.
Yeah, that's a big concern for a lot of people.
But he doesn't think it's an immediate threat.
Okay.
In fact, he predicts a future where everyone has personal robots.
That's wild.
It's like something out of a movie.
Yeah. But with Musk, you never know.
You never know, and he emphasizes the need to find meaning and purpose.
In a world where machines are doing so much of the work.
Right, it's a question that philosophers have been thinking about for ages.
It is.
Rogan then brings up universal basic income.
As a way to deal with a job displacement.
But they both agree that having a purpose is more than just having money.
Right.
It's about feeling fulfilled and contributing to society, even in a world reshaped by technology.
So that leaves us with a big question.
Yeah.
How do we define work and purpose in a world of increasing automation?
What roles will we play when machines can do so many things better and faster than us?
It's a lot to think about.
It is, and we're just getting started. Join us for part 2, where we'll explore their thoughts on Grock Musk's AI system, the crazy world of John McAfee, and the always entertaining topic of meth Nazis.
It's going to be a wild ride.
Buckle up.
Welcome back to our deep dive into this 2024 conversation with Elon Musk and Joe Rogan.
Okay, so last time we left off, they were talking about robots and AI and the future of work.
Right, and from there, they kind of segue into talking about Grock.
Which was Musk's AI system.
That was still under development at the time.
So this is 2024.
Early days for Grock.
So what was Grock like back then?
Well, Musk describes it as being designed for humor.
Okay.
Unfiltered and uncentered.
So basically,
He wanted it to push boundaries.
I could see that.
And of course, Rogan tries to steer Grock towards more edgy, even vulgar humor.
So did Grock actually deliver the laughs?
Well, the results were kind of mixed.
I can imagine.
It's clear Grock was still learning.
Right.
They even joke about needing to release a Grock unhinged mode at some point.
That's hilarious.
It really highlights the difficulty of teaching AI to understand humor,
Yeah.
let alone create it.
Especially when you're dealing with humor that pushes the envelope.
Exactly.
It's a good point, though. Humor is so subjective.
It really is.
Like what one person finds funny.
Another might find offensive.
Totally. It makes you wonder if AI can ever really grasp that.
Right. Can you program something to be funny?
Or is it just a human thing?
And then there are the ethical implications.
Yeah.
Like, what if AI starts making jokes that are used to manipulate or deceive people?
That's a scary thought.
It is.
Speaking of jokes that land the wrong way,
Mhm.
Musk and Rogan share some real-world examples of humor that got them into trouble.
Oh, like what?
Well, Rogan talks about a joke he made about transgender women in swimming.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
That sparked a huge backlash.
It did.
And they both express frustration with what they see as this culture of censorship.
Where you can't say anything without offending someone.
Right. They argue that humor is essential for a healthy society.
It is a way to release tension,
And they worry that the space for free expression
especially when it comes to sensitive topics.
is shrinking.
Yeah, it's a valid concern.
And then from there, they go to a completely different topic.
Oh, where do they go next?
The life and times of John McAfee.
The antivirus software guy?
Yeah, he was a bit of a legend.
To say the least.
They swapped stories about McAfee's alleged drug operation in Belize, his habit of playing Russian roulette with a loaded gun,
What?
and his eventual death while on the run from the authorities.
Wow, what a life.
It's like something out of a movie.
It really is.
And speaking of media portrayals, they also touch on how the media depicted Donald Trump.
They weren't too happy about it, were they?
No, they say it was overwhelmingly negative and focused on portraying him as a villain.
Right.
They bring up the very fine people hoax again.
Where they say his words were taken out of context.
They argue that this is just one example of how the media twists narratives to fit a certain agenda.
So they're basically saying, don't believe everything you read.
Yeah, and they contrast this with what they see as a lack of scrutiny applied to figures on the left.
So they're saying there's a double standard
Exact.
when it comes to media coverage.
And this fuels their skepticism towards mainstream narratives.
And reinforces their belief in seeking out alternative sources of information.
It's about thinking for yourself,
Absolutely.
not just blindly accepting what you're told.
Right.
They seem particularly frustrated with what they call the hypocrisy of the left.
Especially when it comes to issues like government corruption and censorship.
They argue that the left, who were once champions of holding the government accountable, have become much more tolerant of these issues now that their party is in power.
It's an interesting point.
And they used the Twitter files as an example.
Remind me what those were again?
So the Twitter files were a bunch of internal Twitter documents that Musk released,
Yeah, okay.
which allegedly revealed government involvement in censoring certain information on the platform. Musk claims that Twitter, under its previous management, was actively participating in this censorship.
And that they were even getting paid by the government to do it.
It was a huge scandal.
It was.
And they even claim that platforms like YouTube were deliberately limiting the reach of Rogan's interview with Trump.
Making it harder for people to find.
They see this as part of a wider pattern of suppressing dissenting voices.
And controlling the narrative online.
It raises an important question.
What's that?
Who's really in control of information online?
And how does that impact free speech and access to different perspectives?
It's something to think about.
It is.
And they don't stop there.
Oh, of course not.
They also criticize the media's coverage of the COVID-19 pandemic.
What did they say about that?
They were critical of the suppression of the lab leak theory.
Right.
And how anyone who questioned the official narrative was labeled a conspiracy theorist.
Yeah, I remember that.
They claim that the media's reliance on information from pharmaceutical companies
Who obviously have a financial interest in promoting their product.
created a bias towards certain narratives and shut down open discussion of alternative viewpoints.
That's a big accusation.
They even questioned the effectiveness and safety of the COVID-19 vaccines,
Wow.
citing the lack of long-term data and potential side effects.
That's pretty controversial.
It is.
So where do they go from there?
Back to politics.
Okay.
And the potential for voter fraud in the 2024 election.
This is where things get interesting.
Musk claims that Democrats are busing in massive numbers of illegal immigrants into swing states to rig the election in their favor.
That's a serious allegation.
He even presents government data to back up his claim.
Wow.
He's worried about the potential erosion of democracy.
If this continues.
He suggests that America could become a one-party state,
That's a scary thought.
and they don't hold back on their criticism of Kamala Harris.
What do they say about her?
They call her a puppet,
Ouch.
question her qualifications to be president, and even suggest that her candidacy is part of a larger scheme to solidify Democrat control of the government.
They're clearly not fans.
Not at all.
What else do they talk about?
They talk about woke ideology.
What do they say about that?
They see it as a direct threat to free speech and open discussion.
Okay.
They claim that woke culture has created a climate of fear.
Where people are afraid to express their opinion?
For fear of being called racist, sexist, or homophobic.
It's like you can't say anything these days.
Right. They see this as a form of censorship,
Where certain viewpoints are silenced.
regardless of their validity.
So they're saying that even if you have a valid point, you can't express it.
If it goes against the woke narrative,
That's concerning.
they also worry about the impact of woke ideology on humor.
They say it's created an environment where comedians are walking on eggshells.
Afraid to offend anyone.
It's like the death of comedy.
Remember the squirrel incident?
Oh yeah, the poor squirrel.
They bring it up again.
Feel mad about it.
They link it back to their broader concerns about government overreach.
And the erosion of individual liberties.
They argue that the government's actions in this case were not only heartless,
But also representative of a growing trend of intrusive and heavy-handed governance.
it's like a warning sign.
That the government is becoming more and more willing to violate the rights of its citizens.
Even in seemingly insignificant situations.
Like killing a pet squirrel.
They even bring up the John Wick analogy again,
Oh yeah.
emphasizing how pushing people too far can have serious consequences.
It's a reminder that everyone has a breaking point.
So Musk, being Musk, proposes a radical solution to this government overreach.
What's that?
A massive downsizing of the federal bureaucracy.
Wow.
He believes the government has become way too big,
And inefficient.
with countless agencies and regulations that are stifling innovation and hindering economic growth.
So what's his plan?
He suggests combining or eliminating various federal agencies,
Oh.
claiming that many of them no longer serve their original purpose and have become nothing more than bureaucratic obstacles for businesses and individuals.
It's a pretty bold idea.
He even floats the idea of offering generous severance packages to government workers who would lose their jobs.
To make the transition smoother.
It's a drastic solution.
But it does reflect Musk's belief in streamlining and efficiency.
He sees bureaucracy as a drag on progress.
A system that's become overly complex and self-serving.
So his solution, while radical, does highlight a core tension in modern governance.
The balance between regulation and freedom.
How much oversight is necessary to protect the public good?
And when does it become stifling and counterproductive?
It's a tough question.
It is.
From there, they move on to tariffs,
Okay.
which was a hot topic at the time.
Because of trade tensions between the U.S. and China.
While Musk generally supports American manufacturing, he cautions against imposing sudden and drastic tariffs.
He says they can cause disruptions in supply chains and hurt businesses.
He stresses the need for predictability and gradual adjustments.
To give companies time to adapt.
And then in a lighter moment,
A change of pace.
they talk about Musk's Tesla Model S Plaid.
Which is a super high-performance electric car.
He talks about all the modifications he's making to his Plaid.
Like what?
A carbon fiber wide-body kit, upgraded suspension, and a custom interior.
Sounds fancy.
It's a reminder that even when discussing global politics and existential threats, people still find joy in the simple things.
The little things in life.
It's also a testament to Musk's passion for engineering.
And pushing the boundaries of what's possible.
He's not content with just driving a stock car.
He wants to make it even better.
Faster, more unique.
It's that drive to innovate.
That's made him so successful.
And speaking of innovation, they touch on the growing popularity of electric cars.
And they give Tesla credit for leading the charge.
They highlight the advantages of electric vehicles.
From their acceleration to the convenience of home charging.
They even joke about how gas stations are becoming relics of the past.
In a world dominated by electric cars,
It's a glimpse into the future.
where electric vehicles are the norm.
A vision that Musk has helped to create.
It also reflects a larger shift in thinking,
About transportation and sustainability.
a move away from fossil fuels.
Towards cleaner and more efficient technologies.
But then the conversation takes another turn.
Where do they go next?
Rogan brings up those rumors about Tesla releasing a smartphone.
Oh, yeah, I remember those.
Musk denies that they have any immediate plans for a Tesla phone.
But he doesn't rule it out completely.
It's like he's leaving the door open.
Stick crack.
He suggests that Tesla could hypothetically develop a phone that's neither Android nor iPhone.
Using their expertise in operating systems and software.
But he makes it clear that it's not something they're actively pursuing, unless circumstances force their hand.
And what would those circumstances be?
He hints that they might be compelled to create a phone if Apple and Google become too restrictive or engage in censorship.
It's like he sees Tesla as a potential disruptor in multiple industries.
Not just cars and space travel.
It also highlights the growing power of tech giants like Apple and Google.
And the potential they have to control information and access to technology.
Musk's hypothetical phone represents a challenge to their dominance.
A possible alternative for people who want a less controlled digital environment.
It's an interesting idea.
They even discuss the challenges of breaking free from the Apple ecosystem.
Which can be tough.
Rogan talks about how difficult it is to switch to an Android phone.
Even though he admits that Samsung devices often have better hardware.
He talks about the hurdles of moving away from iMessage and FaceTime.
Which are so integrated into the Apple world.
It's a testament to Apple's ability to create a closed ecosystem.
That's both appealing and hard to escape.
They successfully lock in so many users,
Making it difficult to switch.
even when there are good alternatives out there.
It's a clever strategy.
And then Musk drops a bit of a bombshell.
What?
He reveals that the government has access to his text messages.
Oh, wow.
Rogan doesn't seem surprised at all by this.
I guess it's not that surprising.
It's a reminder of the extent of government surveillance
In the digital age.
and how little privacy we actually have.
Especially in our online communications.
It also raises concerns about the potential for abuse.
Especially when it comes to targeting people who are critical of the government.
They criticize what they see as a double standard in the media when it comes to privacy and surveillance.
What do they mean by that?
They argue that the left is quick to condemn government overreach when it targets conservatives.
But they're silent when it's directed at people they agree with.
They see this as hypocrisy.
A willingness to overlook wrongdoing when it benefits their political interests.
It speaks to a broader issue of selective outrage.
Where certain issues are magnified or downplayed depending on political allegiances.
And it raises questions about the role of the media
In shaping public perception.
and how bias can influence reporting.
It's a valid concern.
Then they share a lighter moment,
Okay.
discussing a video that Caitlyn Jenner posted on X.
What was the video about?
She teases Mark Cuban about transitioning.
Oh, wow.
They find it funny that Jenner, a transgender woman, would poke fun at Cuban's appearance.
And perceived similarities to Rachel Maddow.
It's a lighthearted moment.
In an otherwise serious conversation.
It reflects the evolving nature of humor in the social media age.
where public figures can engage in playful banter.
and challenge traditional norms.
It also highlights the increasing visibility of transgender individuals in popular culture.
And their willingness to use humor to address sensitive topics.
Humor can be a powerful tool.
It can.
So where do they go from there?
They move on to discussing the potential of integrating X with television.
So people can watch videos on their TV screens,
Musk confirms that this is already possible through the X app.
which is available on some smart TVs.
This shows X's ambition to become a comprehensive media platform.
Not just a social media site.
They're aiming to compete with platforms like YouTube.
By offering a seamless viewing experience across different devices.
Musk reveals that X is even working on a feature that will allow users to watch videos on their TVs using an Apple TV device.
That's interesting.
This focus on accessibility and reaching a wider audience is key to their strategy.
They understand that many people prefer watching videos on larger screens.
And they're making it easier to do that within the X ecosystem
It's a strategic move.
to compete with established streaming services.
And position X as a one-stop shop for video content.
It also demonstrates their adaptability and willingness to embrace new technologies.
To enhance the user experience.
And they go on to discuss the potential of X to actually replace YouTube.
Wow, that's a bold statement.
They acknowledge that X's video platform is still in development.
But they emphasize how rapidly it's progressing,
They compare X's features to YouTube's,
noting that X offers the ability to watch full-length videos.
just like YouTube,
It's clear that Musk believes X can be a serious competitor to YouTube.
offering a comparable, if not superior, viewing experience.
This ambition reflects their belief in the power of innovation and disruption.
And their willingness to challenge the established giants of the tech world.
It's an exciting time to be in the tech industry.
They admit that X still needs to improve its algorithm and recommendation system,
To reach the level of personalization that YouTube offers,
but they're confident that it will happen over time,
they see X's strength in its direct connection to users.
creating a more interactive and engaging viewing experience
It highlights their focus on building a community.
and fostering a sense of shared experience,
They're betting on X's ability to create a more intimate and responsive environment.
where users feel connected to the content and the creators they follow.
It's a different approach to social media.
And speaking of connection and community, they circle back to Grock
Musk's AI system.
and its potential for humor.
They continue their attempts to coax Grock into producing edgy and vulgar jokes.
But the results are still a mixed bag.
They discuss the inherent complexities of humor.
And the challenges of programming an AI that can truly understand and generate it.
It's a fascinating challenge.
They ponder the ethical implications of AI that can create humor.
Acknowledging its potential for both good and bad,
They express concern about AI being used to manipulate or deceive.
especially when it comes to using humor to spread propaganda or sow discord.
It's a valid concern.
Humor can be a powerful tool.
And in the wrong hands, it could definitely be used for harmful purposes.
Exactly.
Musk and Rogan emphasize the importance of responsible AI development.
Urging caution and careful consideration of the potential consequences,
They recognize the power of AI,
and stress the need to ensure that it's used for beneficial purposes.
not to amplify existing biases or create new forms of harm.
This raises a vital question for society as a whole.
What's that?
How do we navigate the ethical challenges of AI?
Especially as it becomes more sophisticated and integrated into our lives.
How do we ensure that AI serves humanity?
Not the other way around.
It's a question we need to be asking ourselves.
They then give a specific example of Grock's struggle with humor.
Okay, what was it?
They give it a prompt asking it to roast the idea of biological men who identify as women competing in women's swimming.
Oh, wow, that's a touchy subject.
But Grock, seemingly reluctant to generate potentially offensive content, delivers a pretty tame response.
Avoiding the more controversial aspects of the topic.
It illustrates how difficult it is to program AI to navigate sensitive and potentially offensive subjects.
It also raises questions about the role of censorship in AI development.
Should AI be restricted from expressing certain viewpoints?
Even if those viewpoints are controversial or potentially harmful,
Where do you draw the line?
it's a tough question.
Musk and Rogan are clearly frustrated with Grock's hesitation.
To fully engage with the prompt,
They suggest that it's being overly cautious and politically correct.
they argue that true humor requires the freedom to push boundaries and challenge norms.
Even if it means risking offense.
It's an interesting debate.
They delve into a broader discussion about the potential impact of AI on society.
Acknowledging both the potential benefits and risks.
They express concern about the possibility of AI being used to create deepfakes, spread misinformation, and manipulate people.
Those are all valid concerns,
They also acknowledge the potential for AI to automate jobs.
leading to widespread unemployment and social unrest.
Their concerns reflect a growing anxiety about the rapid pace of AI development.
And its implications for the future,
They recognize that AI has the power to fundamentally change our world.
both for good and for bad.
It's a call for careful consideration and responsible development,
Ensuring that AI is used to empower humanity.
not to control or exploit it.
It's a message we should all take to heart.
They stress the need for ethical guidelines and regulations.
To govern the development and deployment of AI.
They argue that without proper oversight, AI could pose a serious threat to human autonomy and well-being.
It's a scary thought.
They see a need for proactive measures,
To mitigate potential harms,
like job displacement and the spread of misinformation.
while still allowing AI to develop and benefit society.
It's a delicate balance.
It is.
And they go on to discuss the specific challenges of regulating AI,
Recognizing that it's a rapidly evolving field.
with blurred boundaries and complex ethical considerations.
It's a tough one.
They're skeptical about the government's ability to effectively regulate AI.
Really?
They suggest that the tech industry itself might need to self-regulate.
To prevent potential harms.
It's an interesting idea.
It is.
This brings up the question of who's ultimately responsible for ensuring that AI is developed and used ethically.
Can we rely on tech companies to prioritize the public good over profit?
Or do we need strong government oversight to prevent abuse and protect vulnerable populations?
It's a tough question.
With no easy answers.
So what's their take on the whole job displacement thing?
They acknowledge that AI is likely to automate many tasks that are currently done by humans.
Right.
They express concern about the social and economic consequences of widespread unemployment.
Yeah, that's a big concern.
They suggest that society needs to find ways to adapt.
To a world where traditional jobs may become scarce.
This leads them to discuss universal basic income,
UBI.
where every citizen receives a guaranteed minimum income.
Regardless of whether they have a job or not.
They recognize that UBI is a controversial idea,
With potential drawbacks.
but they see it as a possible solution to the challenges of mass unemployment and economic inequality.
It's a conversation starter for sure.
They acknowledge that UBI isn't a perfect solution.
But they believe it's a conversation we need to have.
As the AI and automation continue to advance,
We need to be thinking about these things now.
they emphasize the importance of exploring new models of work and social safety nets.
To ensure that everyone can participate in a future where machines might be doing much of the work.
It's about being proactive.
And planning for the future.
They then dive into the more philosophical implications of AI.
What do they say about that?
They ponder what it means to be human in a world where machines might surpass us in intelligence and capabilities.
That's a deep question.
They express a mix of excitement and apprehension.
Recognizing that AI has the potential to both liberate and threaten humanity.
It's a double-edged sword.
It is.
Musk and Rogan acknowledge that the future is uncertain.
But they remain optimistic about the potential for AI to improve human lives.
They see AI as a tool that can be used to solve some of the world's most pressing problems.
Like climate change, disease, and poverty.
They also believe AI can unlock new possibilities for human creativity and exploration.
Pushing the boundaries of what's possible.
It's a hopeful vision of the future,
One where AI is used to enhance human potential.
not to replace or diminish it.
It's a call for collaboration, not competition.
Recognizing that the future of AI is ultimately in our hands.
It's up to us to shape it.
And they wrap up this part of the conversation by returning to the importance of personal responsibility and action.
They argue that we can't just sit back and passively wait for the future to unfold.
We need to actively shape it.
By thinking critically, challenging assumptions, and holding those in power accountable.
It's a message of empowerment.
Reminding us that we all have a role to play in shaping the future.
We can't just leave it to politicians or tech CEOs.
We need to be informed, engaged, and willing to challenge the status quo.
Okay, so we're back for the final part of our deep dive into this conversation.
Between Elon Musk and Joe Rogan.
And they shift gears a little bit here.
Oh, yeah, where do they go?
They start talking about crime
Okay.
and what they see is a too lenient justice system.
That's a big issue.
It is. And Musk even shares a personal story about his mother's friends
Oh, wow.
being assaulted in New York City.
That's scary.
It is, and it really highlights their concerns about rising crime rates.
And they think the current approach to criminal justice isn't working.
Yeah, they think it's too focused on rehabilitation.
And not enough on punishment.
which they say leads to a sense of lawlessness.
In some parts of the country.
So they advocate for a tougher approach to law enforcement.
And a greater emphasis on holding criminals accountable.
They believe that if you don't punish crime effectively,
It makes people feel like they can get away with anything.
and it undermines the safety and security of everyone.
Right. It's like society starts to break down.
But they also contrast this with what they see as a lack of accountability,
For people in power.
like in government and the media,
They bring up examples like the Hunter Biden laptop story
and the suppression of a COVID lab leak theory,
as evidence of a system that protects the elite.
while ignoring the struggles of ordinary people.
So they're saying there's a double standard,
Exactly.
one set of rules for the powerful.
And another set of rules for everyone else.
That's a pretty cynical view,
It is, but they see it as a sign of a corrupt system,
where justice isn't applied equally,
and this feeds into their distrust of institutions
and their belief that the system is rigged.
against the average person.
But what's their solution?
They emphasize individual responsibility.
And the need for citizens to hold those in power accountable.
They call for greater transparency
Cynical thinking.
and a willingness to challenge the status quo.
It's like they're saying, don't just sit there and take it.
Stand up for what you believe in.
Make your voice heard.
They argue that complacency and apathy have allowed things to get this bad
That the only way to fix it.
is through active citizen engagement.
It's a powerful message.
It is a call to action.
And it leads them to their final point,
The importance of voting.
especially in the 2024 election.
They urge listeners to vote like their life depends on it.
Wow.
They frame the election as a make-or-break moment.
For America.
They're worried about what would happen if the Democrats win.
They predict it would lead to a loss of freedoms
Economic decline.
and a concentration of power in the hands of a few
They paint a pretty bleak picture.
of what America could become.
They talk about open borders, rampant crime.
And the silencing of dissenting voices
They believe the 2024 election is the last chance,
to prevent this from happening.
and to safeguard the principles of freedom and opportunity.
That they see as essential to America.
It's a powerful call to action.
A plea for listeners to understand the stakes.
And have exercised their right to vote.
Agree with their views or not.
Their passion and conviction are undeniable.
So that was quite a deep dive.
We covered a lot of ground.
From AI to woke culture to the future of America.
It was a whirlwind of ideas and opinions
And it all started with a simple conversation.
between Elon Musk and Joe Rogan.
It just goes to show.
You never know where a conversation might lead.
And how even seemingly unrelated topics
Can be connected in unexpected ways. So to our listeners, we leave you with this.
What are you doing to make your voice heard?
Are you informed? Are you engaged? Are you challenging the status quo?
Because the future isn't something that just happens.
It's something we create.
Together.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.